So moving on to think a little bit about coaching models and cycles, I notice you've got grow model here, which is something that I'm really familiar with, and I do see they're out in the sector in different places. Talk to me about how you found grow to be useful.
I think it was very much the introductory coaching model for a lot of us. And I think there's a reason why it's stayed in our heads and why it's still popular. And I think it's the acronym is really powerful. Grow, and I think when I'm working with new coaches or advanced practitioners, I say here's a great starting point to build your practice upon, because it's quite easy to remember for you to structure your coaching conversations. And invariably, they come back and say, "Oh, I use Grow, and it worked for me." And as you get more experience and you adapt your practice, maybe you move away from the sort of the structure and the rigidness of these models. But I think it's a great model, and I think particularly the reality describing the current situation. And for a lot of teachers, whether they need support or not, just talking about their practice, they need to talk about their current situation, their current context,
Yeah.
what's going well, what's not going well. This is where I'm at.
Yes.
For a lot of people, we need to reflect on our reality of where we're at before we start to look forward and look at the options of what to do next. And I think there's some fantastic coaching conversations to be had. And sometimes it takes several coaching conversations just to go through reality.
Yeah.
But it's a great little model. It's easy to remember. And I think a lot of people still use it. So that's why I've started with it today.
I love it too. I think it's really useful in that it does allow you to focus in terms of intention in that first bit about the goal, but it then allows you to be reflective and look at reality and then be creative with blue sky thinking around the options. But then it's trying to commit you down to some action. So I kind of like this sense of we are moving towards something. We're reflecting on that quite broadly and deeply, but we are going to come up with an action. So for me, I quite like this because it tends to mean we come up with something to do that is driving change forward, which I think is obviously really important in coaching conversations.
And it's a cycle, and it goes on. And as you get more experience in your coaching conversations, you adapt that cycle that best fit the needs of the coachee.
Exactly, and that maybe you don't go goal to reality. Maybe there's a moving around
Mm.
first around reality first before you even refine your goal. So I think your point about not being rigid with use of models is actually a really well made one.
Okay, so I told you I like infographics. So
Yeah.
it was a big part of my teaching practice, and will always be. I love little diagrams,
Mm,
colours, graphs, and things
yeah.
like that, just to put a point across. I think, and some colleagues watching this will be familiar with the Oscar model, and it's sort of a development of Grow. And it might be the next step, the natural next model to use after Grow. Why I've picked this one for today is the S, it's the scaling. And I
Yes.
think it's a coaching technique that's worked well for me, and I think for other advanced practitioners and coaches as well. And I'm using it with executive coaching at the moment, and I think it's a very simple way to try and put a measurement on whatever topic or whatever feeling you're thinking about. Where are you at? With
Yes.
any particular aspect of your professional practice or your professional role and responsibility on a scale of 1 to 10. How are you feeling today?
Yes.
It's a scaling exercise, and then it gives you a measurement to contrast, compare as you go through your coaching conversations. Where are we today on the scale? And I think it's just a nice little graphic. People can get hold of it, the coaches respond to it, and they can see that journey over a period of time. It doesn't have to be 1 to 10. It could be all sorts of
Yeah.
things that you're using, and different little infographics and different images. You can use any images you like, and it's a scaling interpretation of where you feel you are at in a given moment.
I'm with you. I don't think the number makes any difference. I actually don't care what people tell me the number is. I'm interested in the gap between that point and where they want to get to and their perception of that, if you like. So I'm with you in that I think scaling helps you to step back and say, actually, how far along that spectrum am I? Where do I perceive I've made a bit of progress and what's in that? And what are in those next stages to take me towards the thing that I'm actually trying to change or achieve. I think, Oscar, like you, it is really useful. I've used this extensively in conversations. I think it's slightly more unwieldy than Grow. I
Mm.
find that some people, when they start using it, feel that there are too many stages. But I think once you're used to coaching with it, again, the scaling gives you a evaluative richness that can be very, very helpful in really, really refining the gap.
Yes, it's a little bit evaluative based. You've got the R there, review at the end.
Yes.
And actually what I mean, executive coach at the moment, a lot with teachers, is let's review the process that we're going through. Let's take a step outside the coaching conversation and let's review where we're at.
Yeah.
Working together. Is this working for you?
Yes.
How can we adapt the coaching process or the methods that's going to best suit? Let's not carry on with this if it's not working. Let's adjust it.
Yes.
And it might be, do we need to meet less? Do we need to meet more? Do you want to do something else? Do you want to go and have a coffee? Do you want to get out of this room? So let's review the process.
Yeah.
I think the coaching space is so important. Some people don't feel comfortable in a closed space.
Yeah.
They're more likely to talk in an open public space at first, which is great, or vice versa.
Yes.
So I think your coaching space, reflecting upon that, is very, very important.
Absolutely.
I still see some coaching that takes place or mentoring takes place where you've got an office and you've got the coach or the mentor sitting at the desk in their big chair, and they ask the other member of staff to sit on the little chair in the corner. And I am going to talk to you across the room. And I still see that. And I think, yep, let's adjust that one.
Is the tone we want to create there. I think that's a really important point, thinking about where are the people going to think the most freely and feel the most confident and secure to say things that might be points of vulnerability or things that are challenging for them. I think often not in their office is a good move, because the risk of being interrupted is massive. And sometimes just the more social space of being in a cafe or outside on a bench. I did a solution focused coaching training in Germany on modules in Frankfurt, and we were in the mountains outside Frankfurt in the snow in the winter, and we used to do coaching walks in the forest. Oh my God, it was brilliant. We would walk. She would say, walk 15 minutes that way, change roles, walk back, do the conversation, come back to the room, have hot coffee, sit, defrost. What did you notice? Walking side by side, not even making eye contact, interestingly, most of the time, was actually very enabling of free conversation for many people. And we noticed that as we got used to doing it. So I think coaching space and how you execute those conversations and the tone, really great point to have made around Oscar and any other model that you might want to bring to it.
And there's a link model here when you're working with a group, and that's Nancy Klein's thinking environments, which some of us have been trying for a few years. It's fantastic. And again, we could send a link for that, and about how to coach a group of teachers or a group of managers who are in the same room, so they don't start talking over each other all the time. It's a really good technique.
And we've got lots of stuff actually on my website, because I'd already done a case study with Catherine and Andrea, who've been exploring that in another college at Kirklees. So we can make a link to that, so you can see that case study and also the related resources, as you rightly say, Nancy Klein being a key part of it, as well as Lou Mycroft in our sector. So a final point around professional standards.
Okay, yes, it is. It is the old ETF professionals. They are quite old now, 2014, and they're having a revamp. And they've had a revamp. Obviously, I come from teacher training backgrounds as well, and the ETF standards, when they came in 2014, for a teacher trainer, was such a breath of fresh air, because the old standards, as you know, there was 114 of them. The teacher trainees
had workable.
The teacher trainees had to tick off all of them, but there's only 20 here, and I think they were written in a lovely language, good terminology, and really workable for teachers. And I think what I've done in my current job is to embed these into the teacher performance and appraisal process as a model. So their appraisal process at the end of the year is they are judging themselves against each of the standards and looking at their strengths and areas for development, which is a new approach, I think, for the sector to do that, and we'll see how it goes. And I'm tweaking it already, and obviously the standards have been adapted a little bit for next year. So I'm looking forward to that in the next few weeks. And at the moment, I'm working with teachers and line managers to try and understand this process. So teachers have been using the standards throughout the year to rate themselves against each of the standards in particular review points, and to provide some very brief evidence against each of the standards of where they're at. So great for coaching conversations though, because the advanced practitioners can go, you scored yourself on standard 14, why have you scored yourself that? And
Yeah.
how can we actually move that score forward a little bit in the
Yes.
next 6 months? So it's really good basis for coaching conversations that actually links into the teacher appraisal process.
Yes, it's
See
a
how it goes.
thinking frame, isn't it? It's a thinking frame and it's a dialogue frame. And actually, looking at the revision, I really, really like the new ones, I have to
Yeah.
say. I think they've done a great job of it being incredibly current. They feel like they were written a week ago, 2 weeks ago. They're so in tune with where we are during and post pandemic. I think it's going to be a very useful toolkit for people to have. And I know ETF will be devising lots of self-assessment tools and case studies and things to support people later on. But that's an interesting thought, that it could be embedded within coaching conversations, but also within the wider PDR and appraisal process as a springboard, really, for getting people to reflect a little bit more deeply.
Yeah. Yeah. No, great.
And then I see here, interesting to me, this is something I'm not familiar with. I've heard the name from a few other colleges, but I don't know much about it. So Vesper, talk
Yeah.
about Vesper and growth mindsetting.
Well, I came across this academic year. It's part of a college collaboration project, Change Makers 21 project.
Yeah.
It's with East Sussex College and London South East colleges. This was part of the stream that I was working on with learners. Now, Vesper Academy is the link if you're interested. And the creators of this particular approach were really looking at how to best work with school pupils and how to make them reflect on their learning. And it's sort of study skills practice and also practice for exams and exam techniques. So that's sort of where it came from. And I've used it with some post-16 learners in the last term and a half, just running through this to help them with their final major projects.
Yes.
See how this would work, and it's been very interesting. So there's 5 steps in this model, and again, it's a journey. It's a thinking journey. It's a reflective journey, and it's meant to develop growth mindset and attributes and growth attributes and attitudes. It's very interesting in terms of student behaviours and attitudes and their personal development. So it wraps everything up into one. So the vision is basically what your ideal future looks like. What's your vision, whether it's for the next 6 months, 1 year, depends on who you're talking to. What do you have to do? What effort do you need to put in to get there? What's your responsibility in that journey to get there? Because it won't happen unless you put some effort in. And trying to measure what enough effort is quite an interesting angle here. What do you think enough effort is going to be? And those sorts of conversations. What systems and processes are in place at the moment in terms of your role and responsibility, if we're going to move this into coaching as a teacher or as a manager, that work for you, that are working for you, the structures in the college or the processes, the procedures that are working for you to reach your vision, and which are the systems that fight against you, the barriers. What can we do about that? Practice is looking at your knowledge and skills. What are the things that you need to practice to get better at to help you on your journey? A lot of time it's time management, and with the students it was about time management. I would be a better learner if my time management was better. Well, how can we support that? What does better time management look like? And then the attitude is, again, can we maintain a positive growth mindset as we are going through this process? That it's a roller coaster. Life is a roller coaster. There will be some very bumpy days ahead, bumpy weeks ahead, and students love this bit. Life is a roller coaster. I'm sure there's a song there somewhere. And it's okay if you have a bad day. Positive attitude. What are the things that you can control, and what are the things you can't control, and how can you get around that problem? So it's a problem solution focus in terms of it all mixed together quite well. And I thought, well, let's use this model for coaching.
Yes.
As well. So this is where it came from. So it's the Vesper Academy. It's very much aimed at school pupils and schools, but we've sort of adopted it in the colleges to see if we can make it work with our students. But I'm trying to adapt it further as a coaching tool. I'm still working on it at the moment. There's all these things that come through that are new, that you find all the time that are coming through. And that's what's so exciting. It's just, I've never thought of it like this before. A different way of interpreting the journey of development. And looking forward to using this one more.
I think I can see that there's a great fit for that with coaching conversations with teachers about where they want to make change in practice or what problem they're trying to solve, or leaders and managers looking at a strategy they might want to put in place or a culture shift they want to make. To me, that those are just underpinning points of focus for that conversation, that you could have questions related to that, you could have lists with prompts to nudge thinking, couldn't you? I think that's actually quite an interesting generative tool for conversations with students, but also with colleagues and with leaders as well.
I think so. I think it can work really well. So that's what I'm doing at the moment. That's one of the models I'm focusing on at the moment.
Great. Well, Paul, thank you so much for all that dialogue about your experience and so many insights there, I think, for others to gain from. I'll ask you to maybe create some links for us for extra reading if people want to pick up some of these things that you've mentioned for us. And thank you very much for all that time and effort today. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jo.